Police witnesses are saying that this is a very unusual trial, this is not normal. And the only prosecution response is that the transcript is unnecessary because it's not a historic trial. But a transcript is not there for the purpose of history, of a record for future generations. It's there for the accused to be able to say, this happened, we need somebody to review that by appeal or other process. And that's now being made unavailable. The judge or judges are in charge of whatever comes out as being what occurred in court. They call that a protocol, which sounds to me like a summary of what they say the applications and rulings were. But the protocol is not being released. So on a daily basis, there's no protocol being surveyed by lawyers acting for the accused, so they can't actually raise an issue of saying this protocol is and the judge has expressed that the protocols will come at the end of the trial. But the trial is now going to take a year. Well, something short of a year. How is the defence supposed to have a look back on each of the days when they can't even make notes properly themselves or have notes made on their behalf? So it is a show trial is an unfortunate phrase. We associate it with the Suffragette Union and other things. This is a trial that is put on in a showy way, and it is to mark a huge level of, I think, fear among the German people. I don't speak for them, I don't know, that anything puncturing their investment and atonement by backing Israel, right or wrong, is actually a threatening feeling for them. And that's why I think these 5 people have been nominated to be made look like Hannibal Lecter and have been punished in advance by their being detained on a premise that doesn't exist. And I think Barry Ward is right. It's hard to suggest that people who actually wish to bring this to the fore would then run away from their trial. And the only reason that's been put forward for Daniel not getting his bail, and I've read the reason, and it was a bit astonishing, was that he was a flight risk, that he could go back to Ireland, and he was receiving letters in English, therefore he could go to a lot of English-speaking countries. And disregarded the fact that he spent 7 years in Berlin, he's very invested in the culture and life there, and he does not want to leave. And all of those 5 people wanted to go to trial. So there is a show element to the whole matter, and it's a difficulty for Germany, but I think they have to look at themselves a little harder.
And just on our impressions, and Mairead and Barry can give them, but I think under very, very difficult, obviously difficult circumstances, Daniel is showing tremendous bravery and stoicism, but he was also visibly upset, for example, and this is a detail, sorry, we didn't give earlier on, he was visibly upset at the fact that we weren't allowed to discuss with him the case. So we were prohibited from discussing the case. We were able to discuss somewhat the conditions of his imprisonment, and we talked about books and things like that, but we weren't actually allowed to discuss the details of the case. It's just, again, quite extraordinary, given that we're parliamentarians visiting to discuss with somebody who's incarcerated this sort of case, and we're not even allowed to discuss it. And there was a sort of iPad camera with somebody on the other side of it. I don't know exactly who they were.
Translator.
Yeah, but they were sort of policing it, and then there was a guard, so policing the entire conversation so that we didn't actually discuss the details of the case. And he was very upset, and understandably so, by that. And it is clear it's very harsh, but he's bearing up, considering. But I wouldn't like to be in his shoes.
Yeah.
May I ask, just, this is a state-level trial, it's not a federal trial. So it's the decisions on the prosecution and exactly how Daniel will be held on remand, they're made at a state level in Stuttgart by the Justice or Interior Ministry there.
Yeah.
So has there been any contact with the state government in Baden-Württemberg or with your colleagues, the CDU, your EPP colleagues are in charge of the Interior and Justice Ministry in Stuttgart? Has there been any contact at that level?
I have raised it with a number of different German politicians. I, like others, have raised it with the ambassador here. I've raised it with officials. I've raised it with ministers, with members of the Bundestag, and with local politicians. I have not raised it directly with the government locally, no. But I would certainly be happy to do so.
Do you want to go in on about Free Daniel Haynes to prison, or
Do what?
do you want to talk about Daniel in prison?
Oh, sorry, yeah. As I say, I've spent a long time visiting people in prisons. The impression I had of Daniel was somebody who was very strong, actually. I think probably quite an intellectual person. And as Richard said, we talked a lot about books and book recommendations and things like that. He has had to fight a battle to have access to literature, which in and of itself I think is probably exhausting. When he described the conditions of the cell in which he's kept, the room we were in was perfectly pleasant. It was the family visiting room. It wasn't a screen visit, but there was a prison guard sitting in the room at the end of the table essentially throughout the visit, and it was monitored by a video camera iPad device at the end of the table as well. But when he described the conditions in which his cell is, for example, he described issues with dampness in the cell. As I said previously, it has a window, but it's an opaque window, so we can't see out the window. It's a small cell, 5x2. There isn't enough space within that cell, for example, for him to walk any distance or to have exercise. And the greatest difficulty I think he faces is that he is entirely devoid of any opportunity to socialise with anyone, to speak to his family. It's not the case he has access by telephone. Connor detailed the fact that there are 2 half-hour slots a month, and he is lucky that he has family and I think a girlfriend who are committed to taking up those slots. But if you can imagine how isolating it must be to speak to nobody for a 23-hour period, you must toilet within your cell, you must eat within your cell, you get a 1-hour stretch in a windowless concrete yard outside, which I gather is quite small. It is not just demoralising, but I think over time it affects your morale, your mental health. One of the things Daniel said was that particularly during the winter he would end up sleeping quite a lot, and he felt himself slowing down as a result of such a lengthy time in those conditions.
I might just...
Right. Yeah.
I think we need to invest in a few.
Yeah.
We're going to have to run.
Okay. Yeah, look, I mean, I kind of had detailed already how I felt after seeing Daniel in prison, but one of the things that Richard had alluded to was the issue of food. I mean, obviously we were coming from Ireland, we wanted to see is there anything that we could have brought for him. But the food is privatised. It's a private company, a local shop or local supermarket chain in Germany that provides that food. And if there's anything additional that he would like, he has to purchase that. He would also need to purchase or rent a fridge for his cell if he wanted to be able to keep food. So there's different difficulties in relation to that. So like it was very clear that they are very difficult conditions to be in. It is not easy to get to Ulm. We arrived in Frankfurt Airport. It was only that we managed to get somebody to pick us up and drive, but it was a 3.5 hour drive, which was tough going to try and get there at the time. Richard was a bit worried at times, but we made it to a friend of ours. So none of us, thankfully, but we arrived at 13:32 for the 13:30 visit, and that was us making sure we were trying to get there in time. So it was not an easy place to get to, but I do think that he's doing very well in the circumstances. But at the end of the day, at the moment, he doesn't even know how long he's going to be there, and that's difficult too.
So,
sorry, I have to.
Yeah, no worries. You go ahead. Is there any last questions, or do people?
Can I ask quickly, actually,
Yeah.
are there any expectations from, I know you've been engaging with Daniel's lawyers and the other lawyers from the inquiry, but are there any expectations on the verdict of the trial, what they expect to happen? I know he's facing up to 5 years in prison, so...
I would say they feel, certainly talking to them, and I talk to them quite a bit, I think they feel that, the presumption of innocence has gone out the window. That's their feeling. Given the refusal of the judge to entertain almost any of the submissions and applications of the defence team consistently on every single matter, the manner in which the trial is being set up and the show trial character of it, they feel as if the decision has already been made as to guilt and therefore fear. And there's up to a 5-year prison sentence for the charges that, the things are, they wouldn't be optimistic. Let's put it that way. They wouldn't be optimistic.
And that's why the stakes are so high here. And again, there's an urgency that we need the minister and the department to act upon here. In the first instance, get an independent legal observer into that courtroom. That is a very, very modest ask the stakes are extremely high. These young people are facing 5 years in prison. And our sense coming out of this, we're here, a collection of politicians you will not see on a podium together very often. We are less than just over 12 hours off the plane. That's just, we want to get this across as urgently and as stridently as possible. We need an independent legal observer in there. We need more attention on this. It's not getting the attention in Germany, deliberately so. So we need to provide it here, and we're starting to get German parliamentarians contact us, and we're driving it politically, but we need more attention on it. We need more pressure. We would love a Dáil sitting this week. We would love a Dáil sitting next week. We would love more opportunities to bring this up. In the interim, we can only do it through letters and through any avenues we can, and we just want to get as much pressure as possible because the stakes are so very high for these young people.
And we will be writing. We are going to be writing
We're going
to the minister.
Sorry, there's just one last question. What difference will having an observer make?
Well, I thought, and the defence said, that our presence made some difference in terms of the conduct of things. Now, the conduct was still pretty shocking, I think, for most of us, but that there was some improvement. And the fact that, as Barry said, they said, well, we will allow for today the use of English, but not in the future. It seemed like some sort of deferral to us, but...
And maybe just to
Could
add...
I answer something about that?
Yeah, can I just also say before, the role of the trial observer is to independently observe the trial, but I mean, we would be looking for someone with a legal background who understands the European Convention for Human Rights, who understands the standards that are expected in the provision of both detention and a trial, so that they can be making a record of the times in which they feel that has not been met. So that's kind of what we'd want to be seeing. And then once that, if a report was made from an independent trial observer, then there would be a decision about how to take the findings of that report forward. With the exception of Barry, we're not legal experts, and we can only go on what we saw. But having someone there that has that legal expertise, speaks German, and can really understand, based on the human rights protections under the ECHR, what is or is not happening.
Just one other feature to that: the European Court of Human Rights has actually set a precedent whereby they have accepted a consular official account of court proceedings as something they can take on board as being evidence of what happened in the court, and therefore such an observer could have an impact in the long run of great effect, as well as showing the court that there are eyes on the proceeding.
Yeah. And the other thing to mention is, for the first time yesterday, because of our presence, there was MPs from the Bundestag there, which hadn't been the case previously. So even the fact that we went as a cross-party delegation has prompted a bit more of a response from the German political system. And
do you happen to have their names?
Yeah, yes, his name is... I'll give it to you after Kuhn. It's Marcel Bauer. Marcel Bauer.
Which party?
Die Linke. Yeah. So if there's no more questions, we'll leave it at that. And thanks everybody for
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming very much.